It is wrong, and it completely detracts from any sort of professional mystique or aura we're trying to give you. But
I like the look.
well, happy Friday. It is August, and that means it is back to school, which means that parents across the land are saying, free at last, free at last, free at last. And it means that we've had to buy pencils. I don't know. People buy pencils and bouquets of pencils.
Maybe not pencils anymore. But you have to buy Kleenex boxes.
But do you have any kids in school? You have one in college.
I have one in college and one in high school.
High school. Okay. Yeah. So
she's not using a pencil.
Oh no.
They use their thumbs.
Their thumbs now. Yeah. Well, and I actually am also an educator because I teach constitutional law at University of Northern Colorado. And that's because I don't have cat ears and whiskers like you do. But anyway, we digress. So today we're going to be talking about the most common school place injuries because in the course of our combined 50 plus years of workers' compensation experience, obviously we've represented injured workers and in some cases the employers in school place injuries, and why don't we talk about that? So, what do you think is the most common that you recall and see?
There are a lot of people getting hit by cars when they're dropping children off. They're running over crosswalk people and teachers.
They being
playground
parents.
people.
They
Yes.
being parents. So happy to be like, oh, finally they're out of the car. Let's go.
So there are some motor vehicle accidents.
Yeah, I've got one right now where he was hit. He was hit by a parent in the car while he was kind of directing traffic at school.
Yep.
So
that will happen.
That's a definite one, and those are kind of interesting because it's still a workplace injury because you've been assigned to be out there, and number two, if you're hit by a car and you're hit by a car not like a bus but a parent's car, then you have two claims. You've got a personal injury claim and a workers' compensation claim. So yes, that's one of the more common school place injuries for educators that we see.
Yes.
So number two would be...
Well, and along those same lines of motor vehicle accidents, you have a lot of bus accidents, actually, bus drivers.
That's true. I did have one. I had one client who was a school bus driver, and oftentimes if there's an accident, they're horrific, particularly because kids are involved. My lady had it was an awful thing where cars driven by kids ran in front of her and the kids died, and so there was a lot of PTSD issues for my client bus driver, and so even though we kind of think of school as being in the classroom, etc., there's still a fair amount of motor vehicle involvement, right?
Yep.
Okay, so number two.
Number two, I would say, would be you see, well, I've had a few clients where it's a situation where they're injured, like during...
I'm upset. Why do I not get any whiskers or anything?
Oh, because
yet?
I don't know, you're not a cat on here. I don't know, you should have picked some other...
I should have picked something else. All right.
Where they're hit by a door, kids coming through, like from playgrounds, and I've had a few slip and falls in those same sort of situations where the teacher's out doing something outside of the classroom with the kids, and so they suffer an injury that way.
Slips and falls,
twist knees. Like I said, struck by a door, that kind of stuff. Okay.
And one of the things that's a lot of times injured workers kind of get weirded out by, or they'll get concerned about, is something will happen, they think it's going to go away, but after a week it doesn't, and then they start to raise stuff, and then some helpful soul says, well, you had to report it in writing in 4 days, so it's too late. And the answer to that is what?
Well, yeah.
Right.
It's not the case.
Not the case. Even though it does say probably somewhere in your workplace. Go and check. It should be there. It says, Colorado law requires you to report it in writing within 4 days, etc. That is just a meaningless hollow paper tiger. Certainly, if you don't report an injury in writing to an employer, there's a very seldomly used enforced penalty where you can lose half of your lost wage benefits.
Right.
But have you ever been successful in that?
No, I was never when I worked the other side. No.
Typically because there's some proof that the employer knew about the injury, even if it wasn't in writing.
Right.
So, okay, so number 3, third most common kind of school place injuries that we see are altercations. Now, I wish that was between the staff in the teacher lounge, but no, it is students are fighting and the teacher goes, hold on, wait, or something, or steps in to try to do it, and then before you know it, you're dealing with a head injury, broken teeth, broken jaws, all sorts of things. Very common, common. I guess maybe more common in some school districts, but we see them a lot.
Well, and I see a lot of teachers or teachers' aides who help in special needs classes, because sometimes that's going to lead to the child having an issue at the moment, some kind of tantrum or issues like that. I had a teacher that got hit on the top of the head with a computer because the child got unruly, and so I get a lot of those kinds of situations where it's not even just breaking up 2 students, but it was an altercation with the actual teacher from the student. So.
One of the kind of interesting things, and this is like a whole other area, but we'll just talk about it briefly, is a lot of times in those situations, in addition to the physical injury, there's also a post-traumatic stress disorder component to it. And what people should know is that the workers' compensation system sucks when it deals with people with head injuries or mental trauma injuries. And why don't you explain how or why they do that? And then I'll try to figure
I'd love to explain why they do that.
Yeah, well, why?
I don't know why.
Yeah, boy, if I could figure out why.
So horrible about that, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I took off your whiskers, by the way.
I don't look as special.
Now you don't look as special. We could try figuring something out later, but something more. I mean, we could do. Oh, I guess 90210 is back on.
We could be space people.
But maybe we could be fall people because fall's coming along. How's that? Probably not. No.
It's covering your whole face.
Yeah, the poor people who have to try to transcribe this are going to be just like, okay. Anyway, so let's talk about how workers' compensation treats mental claims differently.
Well, they seem very slow to address especially a post-traumatic stress disorder. They concentrate on the physical injury. The work comp doctors are not well trained in addressing those issues right off the bat. They need to make a referral to an expert. That's very slow in coming. And it's hard for the injured worker to always identify what's going on with them mood-wise and cognitively, because they're just stressed about their injury, period. So it's very hard to get them in treatment quickly and properly with the right people. So that's one of the first problems.
One of the big ones.
Yeah, and then you go on later to it just doesn't get acknowledged very well when it comes time to the permanent damage that can be done to someone, because there's such little compensation for having a permanent mental damage from an injury.
Unless it's due to what they call a crime of violence. And so a lot of times what we see employers do, and in fact they changed the law on this, was they said, well, it's not a crime of violence. It was a special needs kid who was just kind of acting out, not really knowing what he or she was doing, and just kind of lashed out, but there was no criminal intent. And therefore it's not a crime of violence, and therefore we're going to limit your compensation because of that. So they changed the law to remove intent. Notwithstanding that removal, we see tons of educators, school workers still getting denied proper compensation for post-traumatic stress when they've been injured as a result of a special needs student lashing out, doing something, and that's simply because then they say, well, it's still not a crime of violence, and we've had all sorts of fights over, what are deadly weapons, etc. But it's just a fight that you need to understand if you or someone is dealing with a work injury on that. And speaking of educators, one of my best friends, Megan Sloan, is watching, and Megan is a educator. So we're going to say hi, Megan, and hopefully Megan gets to be doing some substitute teaching or not, as she wishes. Okay. So anyway, that's what we were talking about. August is return back to school and how folks, educators, bus drivers, support staff, auxiliary staff, if you're injured on the job at work in Colorado, or someone who's injured on the job, then all they have to do is what?
Call us.
At what number? Do you even know our number? Or
yes.
You better know our number,
yes.
right? Do you know your cell phone number? Kind of.
Well, that's hard. That's a harder one.
Do you know your husband's cell phone number?
Yeah.
Okay.
That one
right.
I know.
Okay. So, but if they want to call us,
they call us at 970-356-9898.
And
in Denver, is there a different number for Denver?
There is, but I don't even know what that.
I don't either. So there you go. It will ring through.
Here's the thing, Rhonda. That's so 90s of you, because no one cares about long distance anymore. Right?
Right.
I mean, our area code could be 318, nobody cares. Nobody cares anymore. So,
it doesn't matter.
Bottom line is we're everywhere.
That's what that was all about.
That's right. And with that, we wish you a happy weekend, happy Friday, and take care. Bye.